How's it going, everybody? My name is Cam White, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for March 16th through March 23rd of 2020? Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you. This is going to be a little bit more of a longer video than usual, and I want to talk. There's some stuff that we need to talk about before we go into everything else. Last week was crazy. It's kind of a lot. I don't want to go into the fear-mongering thing of, everyone saying, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. I almost put in a bunch of news segments just to kind of reiterate, what we're going through. I'm not going to do that. But one thing I really want to talk about before we go into the horoscope is last week brought out a lot of fear in all of us. And last week brought a lot of reality coming into play. And so what you're going to learn this week is that's not going to go away at all. But the space that I want to come from is fear is a natural thing. We all experience fear. And in this moment where we could all be scared for different reasons, for different things, and there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of misinformation, we don't even know what's going on. I mean, if you even look at the political situation, this should have gotten fixed a month ago, and here we are, and we still have no idea what the plan ahead of this is. And I mean, I'm recording this on Saturday. Who knows what the fuck can happen by Sunday or Monday when you guys actually start watching this video. So it's hard as an astrologer to, I'm talking about the future here, and we're dealing with a situation like this. Like, it's kind of a weird place for me to come from. And so the one thing I wanted to talk about was last week. I feel like a lot of what I said was pretty on point. The week was really like this, all ups and downs. And even last week, something I thought that was really interesting was we had the moon go into Scorpio. It made that opposition to Venus, and everyone's panic buying, that fear of scarcity, that lack of abundance, going and buying your groceries, buying your goods. I thought that was a very real way of the astrology playing out. And I'm bringing that up because this is, we're in a weird time right now. And, I don't want to de-emphasize that at all. Like, I think this is a big wake-up call to a lot of people in the world on a lot of things. But what I really think on a personal level, because, I do like to talk about the mundane stuff, but I like to take my astrology and bring it more focused towards, on a personal level, that this week when we deal with our fear and we deal with certain realities hitting us, what do we do? What do we do with our fear? How do we experience fear? How do we channel that? How do we combat it or neglect it and avoid it? And so it's kind of hard to give anybody any advice at this moment. I can't give you medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the fuck any of this stuff is. And, it can be very hard to find solace and, hope at this time for a lot of you, because a lot of people this is going to affect a lot of people. And a lot of you probably aren't going to be affected by it, but a lot of people will be. And so there's just a big sense of doom and gloom in the world right now. And I don't even know what I'm saying. This is like my fourth or fifth take. This has been very hard to record. Because I almost don't even know what the fuck to say. But what I will say is when it comes to fear, when it comes to reality sitting in, I think this is a good time to really dig down deep and go, what do I fear and why? And what do I do with those fears? Well, how does fear control your movements in day-to-day life? And if it wasn't disease going around the world, or if it could be nuclear bombs, could be aliens, there's always fear in our lives every fucking day. And this time makes no difference. It's just this fear is more consuming. This fear is more real because we see the rest of the world reacting to it with us. And now that, we're all on our phones, we're all watching, the end of the world live right here. I've literally have been so distracted this week because every hour something new's happening. That's crazy. That's crazy that we can sit here and watch things happen in real live time. And I just think that fear is just so much more of a powerful fuel at this moment. And we have to acknowledge fear. We have to acknowledge why do we operate out of fear? Why are we panicking? You know what I mean? We know that doesn't work. When you're in a what is it called? Let's say if you're in I don't want to say hostage situation, but that's the only phrase that's coming up into my mind. But the number one rule in situations is to not panic. And yet that's all we're doing. And so this week, I want you guys to focus and kind of reflect on, I'm going to really hit on that in this horoscope of what do you fear and how much of that fear do you let control your life? And a lot of you are probably gonna be like, I don't fear nothing, you know, it's not gonna bother me none, but you have fears that control your day-to-day habits and your day-to-day actions. And I'm not trying to sit here and say you should relinquish all of your fear and act, you know, like an idiot and go out and just do whatever. No, I just think this is a great opportunity for us to actually look at what are we scared of and how does that drive or operate us? How does that limit us from doing what we want to do or feeling more expression, feeling more joy? And I think this week is going to be a big week of facing our fears. This is going to be a really big week of kind of going into the storm without a good enough map to really navigate yourself, but you got to get through it anyway. And one thing I do also want to say too is I personally think that what we're going to see this week is really going to define for the next few months. Like every astrologer's been talking about this. You watch my March horoscopes, you watch every astrologer's horoscopes. We talked about, you know, this Mars in Capricorn time, Saturn going into Aquarius, kind of giving us a taste of the next 3 months. Whatever's going to be going on is going to last for a minute. I don't think it's a time to fear. I don't think it's a time to panic. I think it's a time to get realistic though. And I think that's what the astrology has to offer this week. So with further ado, let's go into the highlights. So this week we have a lot of highlights to go over, and these are all pretty big deals, especially at right now. So I definitely expect this week to be very active in the media, but this week's highlights, as you can see, I don't even have them listed. I'm gonna go over every single one of them with you. First things first, this Monday, we have Mercury going back into Pisces. Okay, it's like, all right, cool, right off the bat, Mercury's going back into Pisces, which that just means Mercury's going into detriment. Things aren't going to be clear, and Mercury's still in shadow, so it's going to be going over all of the things that it missed. Hint, hint, if we look at Mercury transiting Pisces when the coronavirus was going out and the US government didn't do anything, and now Mercury went back into Aquarius station direct, and all of a sudden, things are happening now. And so as Mercury goes through Pisces, you're going to see those things that we didn't pick up on, those things that we weren't very aware of at first, start to get readdressed. And it's going to be still confusing because we're still not picking up all the pieces. And on a personal level, you're going to see this, you know, kind of happen in your, you know, your normal day life of, oh, I totally didn't realize this was happening. Oh, I totally forgot about this one thing. Oh, I didn't realize I have to pick up that too. Next big thing we've got going on. The sun is going to ingress into Aries. We have the spring equinox. That's exciting for me as a fire sign, but I'm also excited about this for everyone because this is the astrological new year, and the New Year's January 1st sucked. Chinese New Year has sucked so far, so let's try to give it maybe third time's a charm for this new year 2020. Let's hope something good happens. But on when the sun moves into Aries, Mars is also going to conjoin Jupiter. That's a pretty big deal. It's like the day of the sun's ingress into Aries, where you look at Mars. Mars is in Capricorn, on top of Jupiter in Capricorn. This is going to be pretty intense, and this is going to be activating, energizing all of this Jupiter and Capricorn stuff. You're going to see things heat up here. You're going to see things get really intense here. You're going to start to see, you know, things kind of get shooken up. And I think as Mars conjoins Jupiter, it's going to be a very, it's kind of like when you see marathons or like running races start, like instead of saying go, they shoot like a gun. That's kind of like the idea here. Instead of just saying go, here's when things begin, it's going to be like bang, like things begin, like go, start, initiate, do with what you please. And Mars is in Capricorn, Jupiter's in Capricorn. It's going to be, you know, a lot more industrious. It's going to be a lot more cardinal in the sense of us wanting to begin, wanting to start, and we're going to feel very powerful with this. But as well, this week's highlights, the next one we have Saturn moving into Aquarius. First time it's done that in 30 years. So that's a big deal, but we'll go into that later. Then we're going to have Mercury sextile Uranus. I think that's going to be more something big for when we get to, yeah. Venus sextiling Neptune. And then we have Mars conjoining Pluto. And like I said in the March horoscopes, you know, this is really going to be intense. This is going to be kind of like those power struggle moments. This is going to be those make or break moments. And then we have the new moon in Aries as we start next week. There's a lot to kind of dissect. So I'm going to do my best to do that as we jump into this horoscope. So I'm already at like 10 minutes. I'm going to try my best to go through this as quickly but as thoroughly as possible. So let's just go ahead and get started. Monday, moon moves into Capricorn, as well as Mercury moves into Pisces. I think this is when you're going to start seeing an undertone of seriousness. Like I always talk about, the moon's in Capricorn. This is a time to, it's a time to detach. It's a time to kind of get serious and harden ourselves for, you know, if you just got, you know, dumped by your partner, but you're on your way to a job interview, you're not going to go cry at your job interview, right? They're going to be like, get the fuck out of here. They're like, no, you got to kind of suck it up for a minute and hope you get this job so you can celebrate afterwards. That's kind of like the moon in Capricorn. And as the moon goes into Capricorn and Mercury goes into Pisces, it's kind of like, you know, you're going to have a conversation that isn't going to go too well, but you kind of have to get ready for it anyway. And so I think as we go into Monday, this is going to be a good time to really, again, when I talked about looking at your fears, looking at reality, taking things very seriously, I think this is going to be a time of being able to take things seriously, be able to look at your fears, not through an emotional sense of being emotionally attached to them, but like an objective look at your fears and be able to guide yourself in a way that you need to be. Mercury is going to be in Pisces. There's no lay of the land. There's no plot line you have to follow. You can kind of do with it what you will. And as Mercury goes into Pisces, work with your own ideas, work with your own thoughts. You know, take things one step at a time and take them as they come. Don't try to make expectations of how things are supposed to be or what you want them to be. Flow with it. Let your mind be open to imaginative and creative ideas. And as the moon goes into Capricorn, this is going to be that time to where maybe if you kind of get serious for a second, detach your emotions out of it, you might have those inspirational or creative thoughts come to you. And then of course we go into Tuesday, and then that's when the moon is going to be making a trine to Venus. Here's some positive news. As the moon's kind of in Capricorn and it makes that trine to Venus, I think there is going to be the sense of having what you need, having what you want, sustaining that, creating that. So I do think Tuesday is going to be pretty chill, but then we go into Wednesday, and that's where I do think things are going to pick up huge on Wednesday. Moon's going to conjoin Mars, then the moon's going to conjoin Jupiter, then the moon's going to conjoin Pluto, then it's going to conjoin Saturn. So you're going to see a lot of activity on Wednesday. You're going to see a lot of things come up. When you have all those type of planets smashed together like that, like it's not like it's going to be anything new or shocking. It's going to be stuff you've already used to, things that you already knew were building up. But as the moon passes through all that, this is going to be the time to reflect on all of those things and where a lot of your, you know, mental and emotional energy gets kind of sucked into. So Wednesday might be kind of a heavy day. And the other thing too is once the moon kind of throws itself in there and gets smacked by all of this, it goes into Aquarius for a fresh breath of air. So it's kind of like having to go through, like, let's say we're in wartime and you got to go through customs and borders. It's like, ugh, like, okay, going through customs during like a crisis time like that, it's exhausting. There's all of these stipulations and all of this bureaucracy you got to go through. And then as the moon goes into Aquarius, it's like you finally get out of there and you can enjoy your trip on your foreign destination, wherever you're at. And as the moon goes into Aquarius on Wednesday evening, this is when things are going to kind of lighten up a little bit more. And this is where we get to see things from a different perspective. Now that we're on the outside of that, how can we look at things differently? Now that we've experienced it, what do we feel now? Then as we get into Thursday, that's when the moon's going to be making a square to Uranus, and that's really about it. So again, more volatility, more creative thinking here. The moon's in Aquarius, like, you know, especially too on the moon squaring Uranus, I think you're going to find a lot of creative solutions to people's problems, especially with Uranus and Taurus stuff, like the whole money thing and the whole health insurance and all of the food stuff. You're going to see a lot of creative ways people are combating that once we get into Thursday. But then we go into Friday, and I know I kind of just blew through the whole week, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday is when it's all kind of popping off. So kind of expect yourself this week during the like work week, get a little bit serious, kind of go with the flow of things. You know, we're going to be reflecting a lot on this Mars, Jupiter, Saturn stuff, but you're going to really see it pop off by the time we get to this weekend. On Friday, we're going to have the sun go into Aries. We start the spring equinox with Mars conjoining Jupiter. Now Mars severs, Mars cuts, Mars inflammates, Mars heats up, and Mars is in Capricorn where he can put an 80-hour work week. Jupiter is in fall in Capricorn, and so Jupiter wants to be more inspirational, has better ideas and not as good as plans. But when Jupiter's in Capricorn, Jupiter having that field experience, Jupiter kind of goes like, hey, this is what you can be optimistic about, and this is what you can put faith in. It's in structure, it's in reality, it's in having a plan. As Mars conjoins Jupiter, there's this sense of having to pursue that. what is going to be the best way for you to do things. Jupiter in Capricorn is very much recyclable. Jupiter in Capricorn is reuse things. Jupiter in Capricorn is how can we make this better? How can we make this more minimalistic? And Mars conjoining Jupiter might pursue those things. You might feel more engaged in that. But also Jupiter is going to be expanding Mars's power here. And as Mars is in Capricorn, if you've been doing a lot more work, I would also say expect more work. And I would also say a lot of what's going to happen this spring with the spring equinox, you're going to see later on when Mars retrogrades. Like, that's the thing about what we're going through is, like, we're not going to be done with this for a while. This is going to linger on in a lot of many different ways. Not that maybe the virus or the disease lingers on forever, but more of the repercussions of that will feel the shockwave of that for quite a long time. But as Mars conjoins Jupiter on that Sun ingress, this is kind of like expanding and being able to emphasize what Mars in Capricorn is doing. So Mars in Capricorn is going to get a lot more power. Mars is on its way to conjoin conjoin Pluto and then conjoin Saturn. So Mars is kind of getting revved up to make some cuts and make some stings and kind of take some jabs at Saturn and Pluto. So I would expect by the time we get into Friday for things to be pretty intense on a mundane way. And on a personal level on Friday, you're probably going to feel either really excited, and excited doesn't always have to mean positive. Excited can also be like you are feeling engaged, you are ready to engage, you are ready to, take action when need be. And also on Friday, we're going to be having the moon square Venus as it's in Aquarius going through Taurus. And I think this might also be a time where the way and the perspective you might see things may kind of go against, your values and what you are actually wanting to bring more of in your life, Venus is in Taurus, so we want to spend all of our money on these nice plane tickets that are so cheap to go around the world, but the moon is in Aquarius. You're on quarantine, so you can't go around the world. That's kind of like moon in Aquarius, square Venus and Taurus. We're on quarantine. We can't go and buy the nice stuff that we want. But then we go into Saturday, and Saturn enters Aquarius. God, I'm like 20 minutes into this already, and we just got to Saturday. So Saturn enters Aquarius. Now, I made a video like a few years ago about Saturn being in Capricorn. I am going to make one for Aquarius, but I didn't want to do it just yet simply because of this. I'll talk about it more when Saturn re-enters Aquarius at the end of this year. However, with Saturn entering Aquarius here on Saturday, like I said in the March horoscopes, get ready for the taste of the next 3 months. Saturn, all about rules, restrictions, discipline, responsibilities, isolation, alienation. In Aquarius, the sign of the public. Like if you go on Astro Twitter right now, everyone's talking about like self-quarantine, social distancing, Saturn Aquarius themes. And that is something that we're gonna look back on for a long time of like, that was symbolic of Saturn in Aquarius. Same thing when we saw the last time Saturn went into Aquarius. I mean, that's when the Rodney King beatings happened, and that was a huge social justice movement. With Saturn going to Aquarius, the theme begins to lessen on the corporate and government structure and begins to more focus on the societal aspects of Saturn things, like our social constructs, our social norms, and how we apply ourselves, what socially we're responsible for and what we're not responsible for. And so on Saturday, I think on a world level, you're gonna see it really loud. But on Saturday, I think this is going to be the time to where we can start going, okay, where do I need to apply myself? Where do I need to take more responsibility and action? Look where Aquarius rules in your chart. And Saturn going through there is going to show you where you're going to be dealing with more constraints, where you're going to be dealing with more limitations, where you're going to be dealing with more responsibilities and hard work. And yes, Saturn is a malefic planet. Yes, it can bring some bad stuff, but I want you guys to look at this as what is going to be the main focus for you for the past 3 years? So, for example, I'm a Sagittarius rising. Saturn's been transiting my second house for the past 3 years. And let me tell you, when I have learned my relationship with money and value and property, I went, I'm making a pretty good living right now. And I was dead broke when Saturn went into Capricorn. I had I was literally donating plasma and I had a title loan out and just all sorts of shit. And with Saturn going into Aquarius now, you're going to start to see any type of challenges that Saturn Capricorn brought to you start to alleviate, essentially, and you're going to start seeing more challenges brought in a different area. So if you're a Leo rising and you have Aquarius ruling your 7th house, you're going to start seeing yourself put more responsibility, and you're going to have to start also dealing more with the limitations and the weights of relationships. If you are a Aries rising, you'll have Saturn going through your 11th house, where you'll have to deal with your friendships and social constructs around community. And there's a lot to talk about with Saturn in Aquarius, and it will get its time. I think we'll talk about it more when Mars conjoins Saturn in Aquarius, because that's when shit's going to be crazy. And there's also more to talk about it, because what's happening right now when Saturn moves into Aquarius, we're going to come right back to here at the end of this year. When Jupiter and Saturn conjoin at 0 Aquarius, I don't know what, but there's going to be something brought up in a huge way that we're dealing with right now. So whatever's going on this weekend, remember it, because it's going to happen in a pretty big way. Sorry, I had to look at my paper again because I forgot what else is happening. Also on Saturday, we're having Mercury, or the moon will go into Pisces and conjoin Mercury in Pisces. And so I think on Saturday, this might give us a very weird, communication's going to be off. We're going to be feeling weird, we're going to be feeling distant, we're going to be feeling reflective and nostalgic. That's for sure. But also on Saturday, Mercury is going to sextile Uranus. So this is actually some hope. I do think that there's going to be, by the time we get into the end of Saturday, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more things being implemented as far as logistical things, battling this whole virus stuff. Uranus and Taurus is going to kind of give us some new and creative ways to combat this. So I do think on Saturday you might see some type of development there. And on a personal level, this is, how can you see things through a different way through this Mercury and Pisces lens, and find, support and solidarity through creative ideas of how to combat these issues, or how to understand these issues better so we can combat them better. But then we jump into Sunday, and we're still not even done with the horoscope yet. So go into Sunday, moon conjoins Neptune. Things are confusing, things are blurry, things are emotional. We're very nostalgic at the moment. We're feeling a certain type of way. And Venus will sextile Neptune also on Sunday, and I think that's actually going to be really nice. If you are #quarantine and chill, be careful not to get pregnant, because you might have some fun. Mercury or Venus sextiling Neptune, there might be some aesthetic pleasure, or even nostalgic pleasure. Like I think the Venus sextile Neptune thing is going to be kind of cool, in more of a mundane sense, but on a personal sense. What are you wanting to connect yourself more to? What are you wanting to value more? What are you valuing? What are you wanting to find more security and, solidarity in? And how has your imagination connected you to that? How has your dreams helped you receive that? And I think as Venus sextiles Neptune, this is going to be a really good time to just look at what you have and what you've imagined. But then also on Sunday, we have Mars conjoining Pluto. Now, on Sunday, you're going to see shit hit the fan with Mars conjoined Pluto. I think this is when you're probably going to see, I don't want to say the worst of it, because that sounds like, I'm not trying to fearmonger here, but realistically, it's not like anything, we're not going to be expecting. I think as Mars conjoins Pluto, there's going to be a very heavy sense of change. And I think there's also going to be a drastic measure taken on one level, whether it's a corporate level, a government level. I think a drastic measure is going to be implemented, something that was discussed when Mars conjoined Jupiter. And I think that's when that's going to be implemented. By the time we start next week, we have the new moon in Aries starting on Monday. And so I think next Monday is when, after all this shit we'll go through this week, is when we're going to start to initiate change. That's when we're going to be starting doing things in a newer way. And after we go through all of this, this is kind of like a closing out. Let's get done with all of the stuff we got to deal with to get to next week. Now, as we go to next week's another big week. We have the new moon in Aries starting us off. Then we have Venus trine Jupiter. Finally, a positive transit. Everyone say thank you to Venus and Jupiter. But we have Venus trining Jupiter. Next week, Mercury leaves shadow, which I don't know how I feel about yet, because I don't want Mercury to keep going through Pisces, especially over new territory. So I don't know how I feel about that one yet. But also next week, Mars enters Aquarius and Mars conjoins Saturn in Aquarius. And I think that's when you're going to start seeing the implementation of, if we're talking about social distancing, we're talking about more of that. By the time Mars conjoins Saturn, we're going to see all of those quarantines very much in effect. So you still have some time. If that does happen, let me remind you, if that does happen, because that's still a big if, You'll definitely be seeing it by the time Mars conjoins Saturn. So we still have the next week, technically the next 2 weeks. So do with that what you will. This has been a long video. I'm surprised you guys are still here with me. If you've watched this all the way to the end, thank you so much. Pretty big times we're living in right now. Again, as an astrologer, kind of hard to know where to come from in one of these situations. But what I would say is have hope, have faith. We have Jupiter in Capricorn right now. This is about finding hope and finding faith in the crumbling ashes of the social destruction that we're experiencing. This is about having faith, remaining hopeful, and using things like humor to get us over the dark times and to unload the burden that we can carry on our shoulders. This is a time to remember that, like, even if we're going through the worst of it, to still keep a sense of humor, keep things as light as you can, because we know that they are dark. And yeah, I think that's what I got for you guys. So with that being said, till next time.